Hey guys.
Hey, Michael.
Hey,
Long time no see.
Yeah, I had a meeting collision and suddenly had to leave. But how do we get through this agenda? It looks like humongous.
I don't think it'd be too bad, to be honest. The last one was a bit bigger. This one's fine.
Happy New
Got to say
Year,
the
everyone.
Happy New Year, Martin. I've got to say the auto merger seems to be working quite nicely. I'm quite pleased with that.
Yes, it has like I had to intervene 2 times today, but overall it reduced the amount of work quite a bit.
Yeah, it's where people added a space to the end of a line on the previous line.
Yes.
I noticed
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I was like,
Yeah, but
why has it failed? Oh, it's one space. I see.
I mean it's like uh I don't get into pressure before the meeting anymore because like most of it is merged, maybe two. You have to still merge, but overall it's good.
Yeah.
Is there any way to escape and do an exploit based on the pull request and modify the different
You
items?
you
No,
tell me,
because
Martin.
Is there a bounty process or something like this?
it should be fine because you must have signed the GraphQL spec membership agreement, otherwise we don't merge. But I mean, you could now do something, but you're also known, so
Hmm.
block.
Yep, yep.
I'm not aware of a way to bypass it.
No, no,
But
no, but you could post content.
oh yeah, you can add whatever you
Yeah,
want to it, but it only adds it
exactly.
as a new commit, so you can just undo the commit and block the
Exactly. That's
user.
exactly. And that's also what I meant. Like everybody that is auto merged is also signed the spec membership agreement and is known basically to the group.
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
Uh, we might all
So
be.
you get on our blacklist.
Oh, we're one person shy. Yeah, we're all here. Fantastic. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this, the first GraphQL working group, spec working group, I suppose, meeting of 2025. Thanks for being here with us. By being here, we have all agreed to the specification membership agreement, the participation guidelines, the contribution guides, and the code of conduct, links to all of which can be found in the agenda document. We'll start by doing an introduction of attendees, which we'll do in the order that they are in the agenda file. So that will start with me. Hello, everyone. I'm Benji from GraphQL.
Hi, Rob from First Dibs.
Hey, BOV. Martin from Apollo.
Benoit from Apollo.
Michael, I think it's yours.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was looking for the agenda quickly. Okay, my name is Michael. I'm from Chili Cream.
And Jeff from Apollo.
Matt, you're
I'm
muted.
from Meta.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Cool. So next up, determining volunteers for note-taking. especially today, again, a lot of the topics seem to be mine. I'm trying to get some of my old pull requests merged. So if anyone else can take some notes, that would be very much appreciated. Do we have any volunteers for that? Thank you, Yovi. And if anyone else can also help with those notes, the live notes document is linked from the agenda again, so everyone can contribute to that whilst the meeting progresses. I'll start by reviewing the agenda. We were hoping to have a TSC election update, but Lee can't make it today. I'll give you a quick update anyway if I can. Wanted to talk about permissions on GitHub for TSC members. GraphQL Conf is coming back for 2025. Hooray! So we will talk about that. There is then changing of the error handling of subscription streams, which is an interesting discussion. Adding extensions to the request, which should be quite straightforward and quick. Talking about potentially moving implementations may not deprecate a field that an interface hasn't deprecated, potentially moving that to RFC3 status. A defer and stream update from Rob. Talking about the coerce argument values has value algorithm and a potential bug in it, and also talking about being more specific with list coercion. Is there anything else that anyone feels should be on the agenda for today? No? Okay, fantastic. In which case, I'm just going to have a very quick glance at the action items, though I don't think that we have any that are actionable currently. Yeah. So we'll move on to a TSC elections update. I believe that Lee posted into the TSC elections issue that we will be closing the application process tomorrow. So if you would like to apply to be a TSC member for the next year, next 2 years, sorry, then please get your applications in ASAP before tomorrow. I'm not sure what time zone that would be, but presumably Pacific.
Just do it now.
Just do it straight after the meeting. Awesome. Okay. That'll do for that. We don't have any more information on that. The next thing I wanted to talk about was permissions. At the moment, there are a couple of TSC members who have ownership privileges over GitHub. Rather than every single TSC member having ownership privileges. I wanted to talk about that a little bit, but since Lee is not here, I think it might be best to save that for another time. So let's move on to GraphQL Conf. So GraphQL Conf is happening in 2025 in Amsterdam on September the 8th through the 10th, which I think is Tuesday through Thursday, but you may need to check that. So a few things on this. We'd like to get the community, the working group, especially more involved with this conference. So we'd love your input. First of all, we'd love you to attend. If you can attend, fantastic. We look forward to seeing you there. If you don't think that you can attend, we'd love to know why and how we can help you to attend. So please do reach out with whatever reasons you have, and we'll see if we can do anything to help there. You can reach out to me privately, and I can represent your needs anonymously if need be as well. So please reach out to me on that front. We are thinking about running a working group track. So normally what we do is run 3 or 4 tracks of various talks, and then we have an unconference day. We're considering potentially splitting the unconference day so that it runs a working group track where we would have 3 major topics, for example, composite schemas, nullability, and some other topic, and then have a couple of the leaders in that space do a quick talk up front, and then have like an hour or so, maybe hour and a half, 2 hours for discussion afterwards. The main reason for this is that the getting us all together in the same room, and especially having the champions of these things talk about these topics, does tend to spark a lot of ideas and a lot of solutions. Even when it's rehashing the things that we've gone over so many times, the conference talk format does seem to spark new ideas. So what do you think? Does this sound like this is something that would be useful, that you'd like to attend? Do you have any thoughts on this or ideas of how to improve it?
I think it's excellent, especially like the conference in general, but to focus also on these aspects of the user groups that we are doing, and then giving also the room, because that's a bit missing in the standard conference. Is you're doing a talk, then you're running to the next talk, but having an hour or so as discussion times afterwards, I think that's brilliant.
How would that work? Like, is that something with an audience, or is that a small room with only people interested in the topic?
It's a good question. What do you think?
I think like workshops might be better. Like the audience might put some pressure or some formalism that prevents some discussions from happening.
But what do you say? Like the way I just thought about it is like more user group style. Like you have the champions of these topics talk about them, maybe about the last things we do or where we are in the state, and then you kind of have the time to mingle and talk to the people. Like in the user group, we often have the talk, then there's a pause, and you have discussions, and people always come then to the speaker.
So what's the difference with a regular talk where someone introduces an RFC?
It's more so that at least in the last conference you don't have the space often to do that, right? You have a talk, and then maybe depending on when the talk is, if it's before lunch, then you have an hour, but in between it's talk. It's like very packed.
So it's a talk with a long Q&A session that's happening with the whole group.
That's how it sounded, but Benji
Okay.
doesn't really have an idea. He wants us to bring in ideas, I think.
Fair. So my idea is essentially we have a couple of talks from the champions, and then there'll be some tables, much like in the unconference. There'll be some tables around, and people can go to various tables depending on what topics or subtopics interest them about that, and they can sit down and just have a little table-based discussion, maybe with up to 8 to 10 people. And then at the end, hopefully someone from each of those tables can come and represent the ideas that were discussed and the conclusions that were reached, that kind of thing. Try and help to move some of these ideas on a bit, reach some consensus. And one of the other things that you asked, Martin, was effectively, what is the audience for this? Is it just us, but in a room, or is it a wider audience? And my feeling is it's a wider audience, but not a massively wider audience. It's for people who would care deeply about these topics, the kind of people that would be either leading the efforts within a company to adopt a new thing like incremental delivery, for example, or the people that are writing the libraries that would actually be, again, implementing it, client servers, that kind of thing, as along with obviously the people writing the spec and so on. So get these various interested parties, and especially the people that may have problems with this, into the same room, so that they can start, throwing their spanners in the works, and we can help solve some of these problems.
Okay, you don't intend that really as conference talk, but more as a work session, like explaining, maybe rehashing the topic, whatever, but then it's basically really a work session.
Yeah, I think that yeah, I think a number of smaller group work sessions rather than one big one.
Yeah, like a
to allow
hackathon or whatever.
yeah, little like hackathon tables effectively, yeah, for discussions and to take notes. But that's my thought. Like, if you folks have better ideas or things that you think would be more useful, more valuable, I'm all ears. That's why I'm asking.
Might be worth asking people to register in advance to avoid having like, 200 people interested by nullability. Random example.
Hey, but it would also be a bit sad if you go to the conference and they say no. It's full.
I know. Yeah,
Only 8
yeah.
people.
But if we have 200 people in a room, it's not the same discussion as if we have 20.
I know. Yeah. That's why it's important to clarify what it is. Is it like we want a discussion like in a user group, or where you also have discussions, or do you want to really make progress on a topic?
Yep.
I think, there was also talk about potentially like doing some sort of working session in a day adjacent to the conference too. Like, so we can maybe optimize conference time to get feedback to do more of a, larger group, not quite as productive, but more like about communication outward and taking feedback into the group, and then perhaps setting aside some time for a more dedicated focus group of the folks who have been, who are part of the working group and, are showing up to maybe unpack that and to be more productive. But maybe that wouldn't be on a conference day. Maybe that would be like for a half day the day after or something like that or whatever. But I think that we're generally pretty open about what that could look like, right? Like part of it is just listening, right? I mean, Benji, is that kind of how you understood things as well?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable way of capturing it. And one of the main things I think about this is introducing a slightly wider audience so that we can get wider feedback. So we have been talking about these things for years in many cases, but now we've got someone who's just come in and watched this brief summary talk for 30 minutes, and now they're here and we're saying, right, we reckon that the solution to it is this, and the action of explaining this to them or having them explain it to us or having them point out problems with it, I think could end up being quite valuable and spark a lot of insights.
But don't you think these kinds of people that have, I don't know, aren't they involved in the working groups already? Like, I mean, for instance, at the Microsoft conferences, I know also like the product managers, they invite you to give feedback, and they do that on the spare times. But I don't know.
I don't
think
know,
that's-
Michael.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth trying it out, right? If it doesn't work, we can iterate.
If it doesn't work, then we still have time to chat amongst ourselves and there'll still be value. Yeah. Okay, cool. If anyone has any further thoughts on this or has seen this kind of thing work well or not work well, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. One final thing is we'd also love to have your ideas for who you want to see on the stage. Like, who would you like to see doing keynotes, emceeing? Are there any particularly meaningful or engaging or fun topics or talks that you would like to see covered? And another thing, again, we want to get more people involved in the conference. So one of the things we're considering this year is potentially getting subject matter experts to help choose talks within certain categories. So for example, GraphQL clients, let's bring in some of the maintainers of various GraphQL client libraries and have them help choose the program. So is there any names that particularly stick out to you right now that you think that we should be including in this process?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of, but yeah, depending on the topic, right? Like for GraphQL clients, for instance, Jordan probably, and then a ton of people like Martin, even maybe like a lot of the Apollo people.
Yeah, and absolutely feel free
Feel free,
to
Phil.
self-nominate. Okay, I'll move us on. But yeah, I would love to have people who are interested in this kind of thing reach out, and we can get them more involved in helping to organize this conference, which is meant to be a community conference. It's for us.
What is the best way to reach out? GraphQL Discord?
Yeah, I think
Do
that's probably a good first place. Yeah.
Do we have a channel for GraphQL Conf already? I think I've seen something, right?
If there isn't one, I can create one. We do have a conference channel, but I'm not sure if it's year-based. I'd have to check.
Sounds good.
Okay, awesome. All right, I'll move us on to the next topic, which is changing error handling of subscription streams. We discussed this in a previous meeting. Since then, we merged Lee's underlying changes. So this change is much more minimal now. And basically what this is talking about is what should happen when you have a subscription if you have an error that occurs on the underlying stream. So if you have a source stream that you've returned from the, in JS terms, the subscribe function on your subscription field, that stream or that iterator, what happens if that throws an error itself? Not if resolving the various field values throws an error, but if the actual iterator itself throws an error. At the moment, what happens is that error gets rethrown from GraphQL. And so that behavior is a bit different to what GraphQL normally does. Normally, if you have a non-subscription request and an error is thrown, then GraphQL will capture it and it will return it as a successful response payload with an errors entry in the object. But what we do for subscriptions is a bit different from that. We're actually just rethrowing the error. It turns out, and Yakov, I'm not sure, I saw that you've come in. I'm not sure if you can better represent this, but this is something that people have mentioned is problematic. And so there is a proposal, or this is the proposal, to potentially change this. So I'd like to open the floor to thoughts on this. This is a breaking change. It's a change in behavior. We would be changing from rethrowing an error to instead yielding a response payload that contains errors within it.
This would remove the last place where GraphQL JS is throwing, right? If I remember correctly. Like if we do this, all of the GraphQL JS functions are non-throwing unless there is a bug. Am I correct?
I think so. There's things like if the schema hasn't been validated before you try and execute, then we validate the schema when you call the GraphQL function, and that might still throw if there's errors. I think that wouldn't be part of, I think that throws, I'm not 100% sure. But yes, assuming that, the schema has been pre-validated, which it should always be. Yeah, I think that's the case.
I think that's good. I mean, as a user, it's really weird. And even in Kotlin, like uncaught exceptions are really a pain, like a frequent cause of crashes in apps and stuff. So the less we have them and the more we can represent with actual data structures, the better, at least from my point of view.
But what would be in the spec? We would just basically throw in, I don't know, an unknown exception, because like passing on the exception message or so would be dangerous.
we'd just handle it like any other error message. So if you do error masking, for example, then you would mask this error just like you would any other.
Okay, it would not be so we wouldn't prescribe a fixed text.
No, we wouldn't prescribe a fixed text, just like we don't for any other error. Okay, I'm going to move us on, but this is something that I would like you to have a little think about. Is it the main action item on this was, should we move it up to RFC1 status? So to remind us, I'm just going to have a quick look at the RFC criteria. Identified champion, that would be me. Yes, we have one. Clear explanation of the problem and solution. I think that's relatively clear. General vague nods. Oh, I'll take that as acceptance. Illustrative examples, incomplete spec edits, and identification of potential concerns, challenges, and drawbacks. I think the main concern of this is a significant change in behavior, and anyone relying on the previous behavior may need to update their code to deal with it. But I think that we do meet all of the criteria for stage 1. What do you all feel?
Yeah, I also think like the behavior that is there now is not the, I think, user expected behavior.
Yeah, I agree. I also see some nodding and thumbs up in Zoom as well. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and move that to RFC1 status, and then move us on to the next topic. The next topic is adding extensions to request. We've talked about this a couple of times. This is broadly to make our other specs easier to deal with: GraphQL over HTTP, GraphQL over SSE, GraphQL over WebSockets, etc. The action that I wanted on this was to say that I've addressed Lee's feedback, and should we move it to RFC3 status? Since Lee is not here, I'm going to skip over that for today. So by all means, please have a look at it and make sure that you agree with it. But my intent would be to try and move this to RFC3 next month. I'll move us on to the next topic, which is Rob with a defer and stream update.
Hey, so I have some PRs open for spec edits, looking to get feedback on that. One other thing that I did since the last meeting was reach out directly to a bunch of maintainers of different GraphQL clients to basically try to get buy-in from everyone that the response format spec looks good, and it just make sure that get some confidence in this response format for moving forward.
Which one is it? Which PR?
Yeah, it's
is it
the response format. It's the one that we talked about back in January 2023, I think, or June 2023. Let me share my screen. I'll pull it up.
Yeah. I think there's also.
Hold on. Okay. Can you guys see this? New response format, June 2023.
Yeah, it's a discussion. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, this is what we had talked about back then. There haven't been any changes since then, but since I have the spec edits open now, and people are reviewing it. Just want to, you know, get one last confirmation from everyone that this looks good. So I've heard that Urkel has implemented this version, as well as Benoit has looked into it and said that Apollo Kotlin, it's good on their end. I've also Jordan from the Relay team and Apollo client, they're looking into it too, waiting to hear back from them. But yeah, so the next thing is I have this editorial PR about path. So this is just a small change that we can make to minimize the diff of the bigger defer stream PR. And it's essentially taking the details about error paths and moving it out of the error section and into its own section so that we can reference it in the defer stream stuff, since that uses path for its own purpose. Would be good to get some eyes on this. I think it's editorial, so I don't think we need to go through the RFC process. So definitely let me know about that. And then in the last week, I was talking about or I had the PR for where I pulled out section 3 and 7. And I think it would be beneficial to go even smaller than that. So I have a new PR that's only section 3 and just trying to go incrementally, get everyone to review this piece by piece. So would be great for everyone to take a look at this section 3, and we can, if this looks good, we can merge it to the integration branch and move on to the next bit. Yeah, that's basically it for me. Any thoughts or questions or anything about deferred stream you want to talk about?
But is there like the incremental integration branch? That's where what the main spec changes are in.
So right now this incremental integration branch is exactly the same as main. There's no changes in there. My plan was to take the bigger full defer stream PR, which is this one, 110, and break it up piece by piece. So, and then come here and ask everyone to review this one little piece. And as we get reviews on that, merge it into the integration. So there's a little bit that we're all focusing on 1 month at a time.
Okay. Because like, and this is already also implemented in GraphQL JS. Do we have the new stuff?
Yeah, all the new stuff
there?
is in GraphQL JS version 17, whatever the latest alpha is of that. It's been there for some time now.
Yeah, because like I stepped a bit back and didn't implement the latest stuff to see where it settles.
Yeah, there hasn't been any proposed changes to that response format since we were talking about it in 2023.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the response format, but also about the execution changes.
Yeah.
Like that we don't send duplicate values anymore and stuff like that.
Right, exactly.
The duplication, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we figured out the response format first, which doesn't have the duplicate values. Then we spent a whole bunch of time figuring out exactly what the execution algorithm should be to get us there. And I'm pretty happy with what we have now. That's laid out in this full spec PR. It's also implemented in GraphQL JS.
So to implement
I just
that,
want everyone.
We look at the to implement that, we use the 1110 plus the discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, these are the two pieces where we have to look. Okay.
And I would like everyone to look at this PR. That's just section 3. It's short. It's basically just describing what the directives are, their arguments. And if we're happy with that, I'll merge it to the integration branch, and then we can move on to the next section of the spec.
How
Rob,
did-
one question on this. At one point we were discussing just moving ahead with defer and leaving stream for later, but I noticed that stream is in this. So is the plan now just to do them both side by side, which I'm happy with. I just want to clarify.
Yeah, that was discussed a few times, but I don't think we ever settled on doing that. To my knowledge, that's what I remember anyway. So this is going forward with both defer and stream. Now, I think that the full PR is the execution algorithm for stream is not fully in there. There's still some stuff I need to add, but I think that we're still many months away from getting to reviewing that section in depth. So I want to start with the other sections and get us there.
I think that's the right decision. We've seen that defer and stream can interact in interesting ways. So I think it's worth doing them at the same time. Otherwise, otherwise the risk is that we merge defer in such a way that we can't later add stream because we find a problem later.
Yeah, definitely. And there'll probably be a bunch of churn because we have stuff at like, even in this section, there's a paragraph here talking about both defer and stream. If we were doing defer, this would probably be in the defer section, then we'd have to rewrite it later. But yeah.
Really minor comment. Is there a particular reason that you've put the arguments for stream, for example, in that order specifically?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. That's fine. I mean, they could go in any order. It doesn't really matter. Just from my thinking about it, like initial count is, I think, the one that people are most likely to specify. Label, I think, is one that would be specified by tooling generally, but not so much by users, would be my guess. And if, I think, is going to be the least likely to be used. So I think that I would move initial count to be the first one, but that's just, it doesn't really matter. It's just, yeah, I was just wondering.
Okay, yeah, and I'm seeing that I don't have them in the same order up here and down there, so I agree with you on that.
Okay, cool. Awesome. We can handle the rest of that through reviewing that pull request. So yeah, excellent. Everyone, please have a look at pull request 1132, and we can keep this ball rolling. Fantastic.
And also
go on.
at 1129, which is the editorial change.
Oh yeah, 1129 is even easier. It is
Yeah.
literally just factoring out path. I've given a little review already, which I see you've addressed, so I'll give it another review later, probably next week. Yeah, fantastic. I think it's a really good idea to pull that out.
All right, great. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, in which case I'll move us on to fixed coerce argument values. Now I mentioned this, I think, last meeting. I'm not sure if anyone had a chance to follow it through. Did anyone have a chance to follow this through and validate whether or not it was an error? No, in which case, let's have the great giant fun of going through this together. Let me see if I can share my screen. Put this up here. Oh, Zoom has changed. I've got way too many windows open. Fix, coerce, argument values. There we go. All right. Hopefully you can see just a Chrome window saying fix, coerce, argument values has value. Is that right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks. Sorry, the little preview window's gone away, so I can't see any of your nods. Right. This is the coerce argument values function. So we start by letting coerce values be an empty, unordered map. Okay, it's an empty, unordered map. Then we let argument values be the values provided in the field. So here is the field. Here are the input values that were provided, arg $var. So we've done that. Then let field name be the name of the field. So that's this field here. That's the field name. Let argument definitions be the arguments defined by the object type for the field named field name. Let argument definitions be the arguments defined by the object type. So that's these, the arguments defined by the field name. So there's argstring is default value. For each of these, there's only one. Good. Let argument name be the name of the argument definition. So the argument definition is here. The name of it is arg. There we go. Let the type be the expected type. That is the expected type of the argument, which is string bang. Let default value be the default value for argument definition. Okay, here it is. There's the default value. Okay. This is where the bug is, I think. Let has value be true if argument values, which we had here, argument values, that has value be true if argument values provides a value for the name argument name. So it does provide a value for argument name, which is arg. It provides this value, $var. Did I just see a message in chat? No. So yes, it has a value in there. Let argument value be the value provided in argument values for the name argument name. So we've set now argument value to be that variable. And then we check to see if argument value is a variable. Yes, $var is a variable. If so, let the variable name be the name of the argument. So it's var. Let has value be true if variable values provides a value for the name variable name. If variable values, we've got argument values, we've got variable values. Here you go. Variable values here is just an empty object in this setup. So this line doesn't fire, but we already set has value to be true here. And that is ultimately the bug. Then we let value be the value provided in variable values for that name. And there is not a value in that for that name. So ultimately, I think that the logic, especially this bit here, I think really is the main bug. There is a bug here where we are referencing a thing. We're saying that it has a value, even though we don't know that it definitely has a value because we're incorrectly specifying that the variable is a value, even though it might actually be undefined. Yes, because the coercion of the variable values, this doesn't have a default. So when we coerce it, we still get an empty object. Anyway, so I believe that this is incorrect. And I have rewritten the algorithm to remove that bad has value check here and to address it correctly based on whether or not the thing is a variable. So has value is either set here or here, depending on whether it is a variable or not. And that is essentially that. But yeah, it's somewhat precise. GraphQL.js doesn't actually seem to suffer this issue. It actually does everything correctly. So I think it is just a bug in the GraphQL spec. I would like from this either for someone to say, yes, you're right, Benji, this is a bug in the spec, or to point out why it's not a bug in the spec.
I think you are 100% correct here.
Thank you, Yovi. I would love to get some more thoughts on this. So please have a look through carefully what I've done there and see if I've made a mistake. Otherwise, I would like to advance this to RFC2 and then ultimately to RFC3. I don't think it actually needs a GraphQL.js change because the correct behavior is already implemented in GraphQL.js. So this is really just a bug in the spec. Are we comfortable at this point to move it to RFC2, or would you like more time to look over the intricacies of that text? There's a lot of head scratching going on, so we'll leave it for now. But that just means I'm going to bring it back to another meeting in future. So, you know, have a look at it. All right, let's move on. The next one is to talk about list coercion. I think, again, that this is actually a bug in the GraphQL spec to do with, is it the same algorithm? I can't remember. Coerce argument values. Yeah. So the problem with this one is when we apply a default in the middle of a value that is a list value. And this goes through a slightly different path. So I'm going to share my screen again. This one is RFC list coercion algorithm. Perfect. So this is the same algorithm again. The main issue, I think, is this. When there's a variable in the position here, we have that int here has a default, which is 3, but int itself is nullable. So it is possible for number to be set explicitly to the value null, which means that this would not be valid. And I've followed that through, coercer values, note that we've got the number, check the field name. This is much like we did just now. Look at the argument definitions, extract the argument name, which is numbers, the argument type, the default value for that argument, which is undefined. It does have a value because we're talking about this value, the whole list value here. The value is this list. Is it a variable? No, it is not a variable. It is just a list value. Then we go through here, let the value be this. If has value is not true, that passes because we do have a value. If it's non-nullable and value is null, but it's not, we've got a list, it's fine. Otherwise, yes, it is. It's not null because it's a list. It's not null, it's a list. And then we go through to here and we try and coerce it according to the input coercion rules of the argument type, which is int array, a non-nullable list of non-nullable integers. Then list coercion itself doesn't really talk about how to handle variables, and that's basically the main issue. So the way that I've solved this is to expand the example table so that we actually factor variable values into it, which we didn't previously. And then B, to algorithmically talk about what we should do when we coerce list values, including, I think, getting the variables though. I can't see that from quickly. Yeah, if item value is a variable, go and look up the variable value for it, etc. So this, I think, again, is another not so much a bug in the spec as an omission in the spec that doesn't show how to deal with variables in these positions, and it can result in the null coming in here. And I think again that GraphQL.js actually implements this correctly, and it's just an omission in the spec for detailing how it works. But again, I'd love to get more eyes on that. Make sure that the algorithm that I've written out there makes sense. I think what I did was borrow from the input object coercion rules. So it should broadly be similar to that. The table for that, I think, is quite similar. But again, it's just another issue in the spec that I think we could really do with clarifying to help other people implement it correctly. And I think this was actually found to have issues in the wider ecosystem. Just looking through. No, maybe I misremembered that, but I think this is something that was spotted during an implementation. Martin.
Just a general question / curiosity question about this feature. Do we know how many people rely on list coercion? I know we can't really change that because it's in the spec, but it feels a bit weird that you get a single item and that you can coerce it to a list. Like, is that something that is widely used? Do we have any sentiment about this?
So I think you're actually asking about a different issue, which is when you specify I might be wrong. What it sounded like you were saying was when you specify a value and it gets turned into a list automatically. Yes. This is used in the wider ecosystem. In particular, I'm aware that the graphical explorer written by the OneGraph folks has an issue in it where it doesn't understand lists at all. So if you were to use that to build a GraphQL query, you will often put things in there that are not lists in list positions, and it still should work fine. But that's not what this issue is about. This issue is actually about coercion of a list that is a list, but where an item inside of that list is a variable.
Yes, I'm trying to remember what, because I put a comment in that pull request, and I think it had something to do with. But anyways, I will take a deeper look.
Oh yeah, you were asking about the
I think
pre-coerced variable values.
Yeah, there was an edge case with items being coerced to list, but maybe it can be reproduced with other types of variables being coerced to anything. But anyway, I'll take this offline. So, sorry, thank you.
I think it's probably worth exploring what you were looking at there to see if it is an issue. I think it's okay, but yeah, it's an interesting one. What if you've got a list of ints? What happens then? Yeah, it's a good question, and partly because coercion is one of the things that can happen during validation. And during validation, we do not have access to variable values. So we can't check that the variable has the right value because we don't have access to variables during validation. Validation happens once, execution happens many times. I have a separate pull request open about that. Okay, so my main aim for this was to see if we are agreed that this is a missing detail in the list coercion algorithm in the spec and something that should be addressed, i.e., should we be changing the table to factor in variables and talking about what variables mean? If so, should we push it to the RFC2 status? So I'm just going to quickly read us the RFC2. Oh, I'm in the wrong repository. RFC2 requirements, which are consensus that the solution is preferred, resolution of identified concerns and challenges, precisely described with spec edits, and a compliant implementation in GraphQL.js. I will tell you that what we currently have in that coercion table, I'm pretty sure, is what GraphQL.js implements. Maybe Yakov or Yovi can confirm one way or the other there. Maybe not right now. But I think that all of these things, other than potentially consensus, have been met. So do we have consensus? Okay, I've got a thumbs up from Matt and a number of bemused smiles. And also Yovi will be looking into making sure that it does mesh up with what GraphQL.js itself does. Thank you, Yovi. Appreciate that.
That's a 10.5.8, right? We are talking about.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Just looking if. Okay, Matt already has approved.
Okay, I don't want to hold us up too much longer here. I would love to get some +1s or whatever on this so that we can bump it up to the next RFC stage, but it doesn't seem to have clear enough consensus from me right now, so I'm not going to go ahead and do that. That brings us to the end of our agenda for today. Is there anything?
Benji, you
Yes.
forgot your implementations may not deprecate a field that the interface hasn't deprecated topic.
We're always keeping this one for the end, you know.
I did forget that. Thank you. I thought I was done by now. Oh, you know why that is? It's because the RFC link for it links to the wrong place. That links to the list coercion algorithm, which I was surprised to see that come up. Yes.
It's 10:53, I think.
Thank you. Yes. So this one, I think is relatively straightforward and actually
Yeah.
has broad approval.
Yeah, it's Lee approval. Matt and me signed on.
Okay, so Lee made a suggestion of tweaking the wording, which I think I have accepted. Michael's approved it. Stephen requested changes. Okay, so Stephen has suggested that he's not sure that it's worth adding this. So I think we do not have consensus currently. It would be great to engage Stephen in more discussion around this. So for now, we'll leave that where it is, I think. Awesome. Okay, is there anything else that anyone would like to discuss today?
But his reason is good. It's actually he picked up on Matt's suggestion. Maybe I'm deprecating a field because I will not be implementing an interface in the future for this type.
Yes, it's an interesting argument. For me, I think one of the most compelling arguments at the moment is that when you deprecate something, you should be able to represent a schema that removes every single thing that is deprecated, and that resulting schema should remain valid.
Yeah, there's yeah, I mean, the deprecation story fundamentally for me is missing that you can deprecate types. At the moment, it's always on the field level, right? But it's anyway very limited.
Yes, it is. But my point is essentially that what Lee suggested when we were talking about something else, I think one of Yakov's topics recently was that adding the include deprecated inside of introspection, particularly for things like fields and arguments, was maybe a mistake. And what we should have done instead is had that top level schema field accept that argument. So if you think of introspection query.dunder schema, if that was to accept include deprecated or not, you essentially either do introspection of the schema as it currently stands with everything, or a new version of the schema with everything that is deprecated removed. And I think that that makes a lot of sense. And that schema with everything deprecated removed should be valid. What Stephen is saying here would be at odds with that, because it allows, as we currently do, I think by mistake, it allows that resulting schema with all the deprecated things removed to not be valid.
Yeah, because like the way he wants to use it is as a communication, right?
Yeah.
To the user. We're gonna remove this field in the future. And then we remove the interface as well. But you cannot communicate that the interface is removed. I mean, you anyway run into possibly problems with that, right?
Yeah, so the one potential solution to Stephen's requirement is essentially allowing the deprecation of the membership of an interface.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why what I meant, it's limited at the moment to fields, and what he essentially wants to do is saying the implementation of the interface is maybe soon deprecated. But I think it's not only this argument, he just wants to keep the flexibility. But anyway.
Well, I think it would be good to come to a consensus on that overarching goal, I think, which is described as, if you remove everything deprecated from a schema, should the resulting schema be valid? And I think, to me, that seems like a goal that we should stick to.
Yeah, it sounds.
Which we currently don't. But I think we intended to. Is anyone particularly for or against that concept, that if you remove everything deprecated from a schema, the resulting schema should be valid?
No, it's actually what should be like. If you look at the schema, like you're implementing a new client component or something, then you would want to look at the schema without deprecated elements in it, right? You look at the new version because you don't want to pick from the old one. And that should be a valid schema.
Does anyone feel differently?
That's
Yeah, so I think we're generally agreed on that. We should test that, bring it up to Stephen and see what he thinks. Okay. Is there anything else that anyone wants to discuss today? Would you like to chat any more about the GraphQL conf and how we can make it awesome? No? Okay. In which case, I'll give you your remaining 25 minutes back. And it's been a pleasure chatting with you all, and talk to you again soon. Thanks,
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.
Have a great
See
one.
you.